Okay, so the first step is to solve for the equilibrium price and quantity. So we're going to equate quantity demanded to quantity supplied. So we have 200 minus 5p equals negative 60 plus 15p. I'll move the p's on one side, so add 5p to both sides. I get 15p. Then move 60 over to the other side, so add 60 to both sides. I get 260, and price here is equal to $13. Now I can plug this price to either the demand or the supply. I'd better get the same answer. So 5 times 13 is 65. 200 minus 65 is 135. Or if I 15 times 13 minus 60 is also going to give me, that's 195. It's going to give me 135. So if I'm going to draw this out, quantity, price, have demand, have supply, we calculated a $13 price and a quantity of 135 units. Okay, now it says there's going to be a $4 per unit tax. So what does that imply? We said it doesn't matter whether we would shift the supply up by $4 or whether we would shift the demand down by $4. In either case, we would end up with this price and this price, which is basically wedged between the black curves, the supply and demand that were the original ones. So we can simply place that tax wedge that's going to be $4 tall between the supply and demand. So this is going to be, this is what it's touching the demand. So this is going to be the price on the demand curve that the buyer pays. This will be the price on the supply curve that the seller receives. Now we know this wedge is exactly $4 tall. So the difference between these two prices has to be $4 tall. So price on the demand curve here is going to be the price on the supply, but $4 more. It's going to be $4 higher. So for me now, I'm going to plug this into these two equations. But for this price on the demand, I'm going to plug in the PS plus 4. So I'm going to get 200 minus 5, but now I'm plugging in this demand price. So it's the supply plus $4. Equals negative 60 plus 15p. I have 200 minus 5ps minus 20 equals negative 60 plus 15p. Moving p's over, I get 20p equals 200 minus 20 is 180 plus 60. Hold on, 200 minus 20 is 180 plus 60 is 240. Divide by 20, price equals $12. This is my PS that we just solved for. So this is going to be the $12 price, and we can plug this back into what we know is the demand price. It has to be $4 taller, so 16. Next step. Determine the tax incidence. We know that the buyers, the price on the demand minus the original equilibrium price. So that's $16 minus what we would have paid, which is $13, out of the $4 tax. So $3 out of 4, that's 75% falls on the buyer. Sellers, they would have paid 13 before, now they received. Now they only receive 12. Out of the $4 tax, the incidence on the sellers is 25%. So sellers are only paying $1 less, buyers are paying $3 more. So this is 3 out of 4, this is 1 out of 4. And we did the graphical representation above. Determine the welfare effect. Okay, so what do I need? I need to know first what is my dead weight loss, for example. So if I'm trying to figure out what is the dead weight loss here, this is my dead weight loss. I have this price, I have this price. we need this quantity. So how do I figure out that quantity? So that I can figure out from the demand, plugging in the $16, for example, because this is the price of 16 on the demand. What is going to be the quantity there? So I can figure out QD equals 200 minus 5 times 16. And that will give me 5 times 16, that's 50, and 30, that's 80. 200 minus 80 is 120. So this is the quantity associated with the new post-tax sales. So for me, deadweight loss here would be 16 minus 12, which is the height, times now the difference between 135, the old quantity, and the new quantity. That's the base, divided by 2. That's 4 times 15, that's 60, in half, $30 worth of deadweight loss in this market. If I asked for the government revenue, for example, in this case, where is my government revenue? We were able to sell 120 units at the tax of $4 per unit. So this rectangle is the government revenue. Government revenue here. Total $4 times 120 units, $480 worth of government revenue. Where is my consumer surplus? Consumer surplus is going to be up here. So above the $16 price, up to the 120, but I need to know what is my intercept. Now we know that's the demand curve when quantity is 0. So if I'm going to look at my quantity, demanded equals 0, 200 minus 5p. I'm going to move 5p equals 200. P divided by 5 is $40. So this intercept up here would be at $40. So consumer surplus is going to be $40 minus 16, that's the height, times 120 divided by 2. If I'm doing the math right, that should add up to $1,440. For producer surplus, we need this number where the supply curve intersects the y-axis. So that is where QS is going to equal 0 and negative 60 plus 15p. So I have 15p equals 60. P, 60 divided by 15 is 4. So this will be at a $4 price. So my producer surplus is going to be the price that producers are getting, which is $12. So $12 minus 4 times the 120 divided in half. And that should give me $480. Okay, the next step is to look at the subsidy. So with subsidy, the effect is the opposite. With the tax, we are imposing extra cost. With the subsidy, we're basically making it easier. So if we have our regular market, instead of dropping the demand, we would actually be increasing the willingness to pay for workers or customers. So it would be shifting the demand and moving the price up. This is receiving the subsidy, and this is the price we're actually willing to pay. So I'm willing to pay this much, but I'm getting this much extra money as a subsidy. So I'm now willing to pay a total of this amount. If we put the subsidy on the buyers, but if we put the subsidy on the sellers, we're basically decreasing their cost by the subsidy. So we would be shifting the supply this way, and we would be getting to this new price that the sellers would be willing to sell at, because their cost was actually this much, but now they're getting the subsidy going this way. So again, whether we would have shifted the demand and gotten this point, or whether we shift the supply, we again end up with the two same buyer and seller prices, but now the wedge is actually to the right of the original equilibrium. Okay, so we just end up with this subsidy wedge on the other side. So this is the market equilibrium quantity. This would have been the market price, and the subsidy is actually going to shift us past the equilibrium. So that means thinking about the marginal cost here as the subsidy and the marginal benefit as the supply, and the marginal benefit on the demand side. What this means for these units that we're going to end up producing and consuming with the subsidy in place, the marginal cost of that production is actually higher than the marginal benefit, the value to the society. So this is actually a negative to the welfare, and this is going to end up being all deadweight loss because we went and produced units that are actually not worth it to the society. So producing up to this quantity, we maximize the surplus. This is the total surplus that we maximized, but now by going too far, we've actually produced units that are not worth it. Okay, so let's do the math here. So same thing, equilibrium would have been at the 135 units and the $13 price, so we have the same market to begin with. But here with the subsidy, so this is now the price on the demand curve, and this is the price on the supply curve. So for us now, the difference here is that the price on the supply is the price on the demand plus 4, right? Because this is the demand price, and now plus the $4, we get the supply price. So now I'm plugging in 200 minus 5 PD equals 15, and now we're going to plug in this PS to the supply curve. So price on the demand plus 4 minus 60. So I'm going to get 200 equals 20 PDs plus 60 minus 60. So 20 PDs equals 200. And this price on the demand curve is actually equal to $10. So this is the price we just solved for. That's going to be $10 over here. Now I can plug this PD into this. Plus 4, I'm going to get a $14 price on the supply side. So to calculate the deadweight loss here, I have the two prices. I need to solve for the quantity. So here I can use, again, the demand curve. So on the demand curve, the price over here is 10. So using the demand curve, QD equals 200 minus 5 times 10. And that's going to equal to 150. So this quantity is 150. That makes sense. This is 135. This is 150. So to calculate the deadweight loss now, I would have $4 tall, that's the size of the wedge, times 150 minus 135. So that's 15. And that's in half because it's a triangle. So 4 times 15 is 60. Deadweight loss is the same, $30. Now, if we wanted to calculate how much this is going to cost the government in terms of the subsidy expense, how many units are we subsidizing in this market now? We're subsidizing 150 units at $4 each. So we have a subsidy that's costing the government $600.